I never thought I would end up in my childhood bedroom at 35. After losing my finance job during the economic downturn, 6 months of unsuccessful job hunting had depleted my savings. My parents offered their spare room as a temporary solution, and I was grateful. I thought this might even be a chance to reconnect with them after years focused on my career. Little did I know, they were already resenting my presence and planning something that would shatter our relationship forever. Before I tell you how I went from sleeping in my childhood bedroom to owning my parents' house, let me know where you are watching from. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want more stories about family karma. Always had a complicated relationship with my parents, Frank and Martha Wilson. Growing up in our middle-class Portland suburb, every accomplishment of mine came with the expectation of something greater. An A- was never good enough when an A+ was possible. Second place might as well have been last. My parents measured love in achievements, and I spent my childhood chasing their approval. When I graduated with my finance degree, landing a job at Westbrook Investments right out of college, I finally saw something resembling pride in their eyes. My father actually shook my hand at graduation and said, "You might make something of yourself after all." Coming from him, that was practically a bear hug and an "I love you." For 12 years, I thrived in that corporate environment. I climbed from junior analyst to senior portfolio manager, building a comfortable life in a downtown apartment with views of the city skyline. I called my parents every Sunday, visited on major holidays, and sent expensive gifts on birthdays. Our relationship was distant but cordial. They bragged about my job to their friends, and I pretended that was enough. Then the market crashed. Westbrook announced layoffs, and despite my performance reviews, my entire department was eliminated. I received a modest severance package and promises of glowing recommendations, but the financial sector was in free fall. Every firm had hiring freezes or was conducting layoffs of their own. After 6 months of applications, interviews that went nowhere, and watching my savings dwindle, I swallowed my pride and called my parents. It would only be temporary, I assured them, just until the market recovers and I can get back on my feet. There was a long silence on the phone before my mother said, "Well, I suppose we have the space. Your old room is full of storage, but we could clear it out." Moving back felt like stepping backward in time. My room had been converted to a strange hybrid of guest room and storage space. Boxes of my father's old work documents crowded the closet. The walls, once covered with my college pennants and finance competition certificates, were now bare, except for a generic landscape painting that had probably been on sale at the local home goods store. The first week actually went surprisingly well. My mother cooked my favorite childhood meals. My father and I watched baseball games together. We fell into a routine that felt almost comfortable. I started applying for jobs with renewed enthusiasm, even considering positions that paid significantly less than my previous salary. Maybe this setback could be an opportunity to rebuild bridges I had thought were permanently burned. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. My mother would casually mention my cousin Thomas and his thriving dental practice during dinner. "He just bought his second vacation home," she would say, while passing the potatoes. "His parents are so proud." My father would check his watch whenever I used the shower for more than 10 minutes, mentioning the water bill with exaggerated concern. Still, I remained optimistic. Family is family after all. When I landed a new position as a financial analyst at a smaller firm, I was thrilled. The salary was only about 60% of what I had been making, but it was a start. I shared the good news over dinner, expecting congratulations. "So, when will you be moving out?" my father asked, before I had even finished describing the job. Frank, my mother scolded, though her expression mirrored his impatience. "Let Jay get settled in his new position first." Then she turned to me. "But we should probably discuss a timeline and some rent while you are here." I was taken aback, but agreed to pay rent. It seemed fair, even though I was their son and trying to rebuild my savings. We settled on an amount, and I wrote them my first check that very night. I noticed my father inspecting it carefully before tucking it into his wallet, as if he suspected I might have tried to shortchange him somehow. As the weeks passed, I began noticing unusual mail arriving for my parents. Past due notices. Collection warnings. One afternoon, while searching for a stamp in my father's desk drawer with permission, I found bank statements showing their retirement accounts were dangerously depleted. This explained their intense focus on my rent checks and constant comments about money. When I gently tried to broach the subject, offering my professional expertise to help them create a financial plan, my father erupted. "You have the nerve to offer us financial advice. You who came crawling back home after failing at your fancy job, we managed just fine before you came back, and we will manage just fine without your input." My mother said nothing, just stared at her, hands folded in her lap. Her silence hurt more than my father's outburst. After that, the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. My father implemented a strict schedule for kitchen and bathroom use. My mother began making pointed comments about friends my age who owned homes and had started families. The message was clear. I was a disappointment, and my presence was a burden. Still, I tried. I brought home takeout from their favorite restaurant on Friday nights. I fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom that had been dripping for years. I even tried engaging my father in conversations about his own career before retirement, hoping to find common ground. Nothing worked. The walls between us grew higher with each passing day. I started spending more time at the office and local coffee shops, doing anything to avoid the suffocating atmosphere of what had once been my home. One Tuesday evening in March, I came home late from work to find my parents speaking in hushed voices in the kitchen. I was about to announce my presence when I heard my name. "Jay does not need to know about the house sale," my father was saying. "The less he knows, the easier this will be." I froze in the hallway, my breath caught in my throat. "But where will he go, Frank?" my mother asked, though her tone suggested this was a practical consideration rather than a maternal concern. "He is 35 years old, Martha. His housing is not our problem. The company is offering 20% below market value, but we need the cash. Those investment decisions we made before the crash are killing us." I quietly retreated to my room, mind racing. They were selling the house I had grown up in, and had not even considered telling me. More than that, they were accepting an offer well below what the property was worth. In my professional estimation, they were being taken advantage of by some corporate buyer looking for distressed properties. The next morning, I casually asked about their retirement plans over breakfast, giving them an opportunity to come clean. "We are fine," my father snapped. "Worry about your own finances. I just thought with my background, I could look over your portfolio, maybe suggest some adjustments," I offered, "because your financial expertise has worked out so well for you." My mother laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Thomas has a financial advisor from Goldman Sachs. When you are as successful as him, then you can give advice." Over the following weeks, I noticed more signs of their secret plans. A visit from someone with a clipboard who measured rooms and took photos when they thought I was at work. Hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. My parents began removing family photos from the walls, claiming they were refreshing the decor. I tried once more to have an honest conversation. "I know about the house," I finally admitted one evening. "I overheard you talking about selling it." The look that passed between my parents confirmed everything. "You were eavesdropping." My father's face reddened. "No, I just happened to overhear." "Look, I understand if you need to sell, but I think you are being taken advantage of. Let me help you get a fair price, at least." "This is none of your business," my mother said coldly. "We do not need your help. We never have." I also know about the credit card debt. I continued, deciding to lay all cards on the table. "And the problems with your retirement accounts. Please let me help before you make decisions you will regret." My father stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "How dare you go through our private papers? This is still our house, and you are here on our charity. If you cannot respect our privacy and our decisions, perhaps it is time you found other accommodations." My mother just stared at me with disappointment etched across her face. "We raised you better than this, Jay. Snooping through our financial documents, questioning our decisions, after all, we have done for you." I tried to explain that I had discovered their financial troubles accidentally, that my only motivation was to help, but they were not interested in listening. The conversation devolved into a bitter argument about respect, privacy, and family obligation. It ended with my father pointing toward my bedroom and telling me to think about your behavior as if I were still 12 years old. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, feeling like a stranger in what should have been a place of safety and acceptance. The parents I had known growing up were strict and demanding, but this cold, dismissive treatment felt like something altogether different. It was as if my temporary financial setback had confirmed some long-held suspicion that I was unworthy of their unconditional love. The situation continued to deteriorate. My parents began having friends over for dinner, but would not include me in the invitations. I later discovered these were not friends at all, but representatives from the property investment company. I found myself increasingly excluded from any family decisions or discussions. One evening, I noticed my childhood photos had been removed from the hallway display where they had hung for decades. When I asked about it, my mother claimed she was updating the frames, but the photos never reappeared. Then came the day that broke me. I returned from work to find an official-looking envelope on my bed. Inside was a typed letter formally notifying me that I had 30 days to vacate the premises. My own parents had served me with an eviction notice rather than having an honest conversation about their plans or needs. I stormed into the living room, the paper shaking in my hand. An eviction notice? Really? You could not just talk to me like normal parents. My father looked up from his newspaper with cold eyes. "We thought a formal approach would be best given your reluctance to discuss moving out." Reluctance. You never once directly asked me to leave. I have been paying rent. I have been helping around the house. I have tried repeatedly to have honest conversations with you about finances. "The house has been sold," my mother interjected flatly. "The new owners take possession in 45 days. We will be downsizing to a condo. There is no room for you." "Who bought it?" I demanded. "What company? North Star Investments," my father replied with a hint of smugness. "They gave us a very fair price." I knew the market well enough to know that was a lie. "They undervalued this property by at least 20%. You got taken advantage of." Successful children do not need handouts or financial advice from their parents. My father said, his words calculated to wound. Nor do they come crawling home when things get tough. My mother, usually the more compassionate one, delivered the final blow. "I am just disappointed in who you have become, Jay. We raised you to be independent and successful. This whole situation has been embarrassing for us with our friends." I stood there, 35 years old, being told I was an embarrassment to the people who should love me unconditionally. Something broke inside me that day, a final thread of hope that my parents might ever see me as more than a reflection of their own status and expectations. I left the house without another word, drove to a bar, and ordered a whiskey neat. As I sat there, I made a decision. I would never allow my parents or anyone else to make me feel that small again. Finding affordable housing in Portland's market on my significantly reduced salary proved nearly impossible. I ended up in a studio apartment that consumed almost half my monthly income, a tiny space with noisy neighbors, and a persistent mildew smell in the bathroom. The contrast with both my former luxury apartment and even my childhood bedroom was stark and depressing. Those first few weeks after the eviction were the lowest point of my life. I would wake up each morning in my pull-out sofa bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how my life had unraveled so completely. I stopped calling friends, embarrassed by my circumstances. My performance at work suffered as I struggled to concentrate through the fog of rejection and betrayal. As December approached, I received a holiday card from my cousin Thomas, featuring his perfect family in matching sweaters in front of their perfect house. Inside was an invitation to my parents' Christmas gathering at their new condo. I threw it directly into the trash. I spent Christmas Day alone eating microwave lasagna and watching old movies. Later that evening, I scrolled through social media and saw photos from the family gathering I had not attended. My parents looked happy, surrounded by relatives and friends. There was no indication in their smiles or in the comments beneath the photos that anyone had even noticed my absence. It was as if I had been erased from the family narrative. That night, I hit rock bottom. I sat on the floor of my shabby apartment and finally allowed myself to cry, releasing years of pent-up pain from always trying to earn the love that should have been freely given. I cried for the little boy who had brought home perfect report cards seeking approval. I cried for the young man who had chosen his college major based on his father's preferences rather than his own interests. I cried for the adult who had just discovered that family could be the source of the deepest wounds. But something unexpected happened as the tears finally subsided. A sense of clarity emerged from the emotional storm. I realized I had spent my entire life seeking validation from people who were incapable of providing it. My parents' love had always been conditional, and no achievement would ever be enough to secure it permanently. Their rejection was not a reflection of my worth, but of their own limitations. The next morning, I woke with puffy eyes, but a lightness I had not felt in months. I showered, put on my best remaining suit, and went to a coffee shop to think. That is when fate intervened, in the form of Alexander Dawson, J.J. Wilson. The voice came from behind me, in line. I turned to see a face I had not seen since college. Alex had been my roommate junior year, a business major like me, but focused on real estate rather than financial markets. We had spent countless nights debating investment strategies and market trends. Alex, man, it is good to see you. We grabbed a table and spent the next hour catching up. Alex had established his own boutique real estate firm, specializing in investment properties and portfolio management. When he asked about my situation, something about his genuine interest broke through my walls of pride. I found myself telling him everything from the layoff to the eviction. "Wait," Alex said, leaning forward. "Your parents sold to North Star Investments for 20% under market value." I nodded. "That is interesting timing," Alex said thoughtfully. "I heard through industry channels that North Star is facing a liquidity crisis. They went on an acquisition spree last year, and now they are over-leveraged. Word is, they are looking to offload properties quickly, even at a loss." My finance brain immediately started connecting dots. So they bought my parents' house at a discount, and now they might have to sell it at an even deeper discount. Alex nodded. "Potentially. But here is the thing about North Star. They typically buy properties, do minimal cosmetic updates, and flip them or convert to rentals with significantly increased rates. Your parents might have sold at a discount, but whoever buys from North Star will likely pay a premium." Unless I said slowly, as an idea began forming, North Star needs to sell quickly to an all-cash buyer who can close without conventional financing delays. Alex grinned, the same expression he used to get when we cracked a particularly difficult case study in college. "That is exactly right. And I happen to know which properties they are most motivated to unload." Over the next few days, a plan took shape. I would need capital more than I currently had access to. I worked out exactly how much I could pull from my 401k despite the early withdrawal penalties. I picked up weekend consulting work to generate additional income. I sold my luxury watch collection and some other high-end possessions from my former life. Alex, meanwhile, began making discreet inquiries. He discovered that North Star had listed my childhood home, having done nothing but a quick paint job and basic staging. They were asking slightly above what they had paid my parents, but well below what the property was truly worth in the current market. Here is where it gets interesting, Alex told me over coffee 3 weeks after our chance reunion. I created a shell company called Phoenix Holdings and expressed interest in the property. I mentioned we are an all-cash buyer looking to close within 30 days, and I asked, hardly daring to hope. They bit hard, countered, with a price 10% below their asking. They are desperate, Jay. The numbers worked. Barely, but they worked. With everything I could liquidate plus a private loan Alex arranged through his network, I could afford to buy my childhood home. The poetic justice of it made me dizzy. The house my parents had thrown me out of, the house they had sold out from under me without even a conversation, could be mine. There was just one more piece to the puzzle. I want to remain anonymous, I told Alex. At least initially. Can we keep the purchase under the Phoenix Holdings name? Absolutely. And I know a property management company that can handle tenant relations if you decide to rent it out. I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. Oh, I definitely plan to rent it out. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Paperwork, wire transfers, inspections, all conducted through the shield of Phoenix Holdings. Alex was masterful negotiating favorable terms and an accelerated closing process. 30 days after our coffee shop reunion, I became the legal owner of the house. I had grown up in the house. I had been evicted from all, without my parents having any idea. They went on an acquisition spree last year, and now they are over-leveraged. Word is, they are looking to offload properties quickly, even at a loss. My finance brain immediately started connecting dots. So they bought my parents' house at a discount, and now they might have to sell it at an even deeper discount. Alex nodded. Potentially. But here is the thing about North Star. Through public records, I discovered my parents had not yet purchased their new condo, but were renting it month to month. That made the next phase of my plan even sweeter. Alex connected me with Westside Property Management, who sent my parents a certified letter introducing themselves as the new managers of the property on behalf of the new owners. The letter included the new rental terms should they wish to remain in the house they had sold and expected to vacate. The poetic justice of it made me dizzy. The house my parents had thrown me out of, the house they had sold out from under me without even a conversation, could be mine. There was just one more piece to the puzzle. I want to remain anonymous, I told Alex. At least initially. Can we keep the purchase under the Phoenix Holdings name? Absolutely. And I know a property management company that can handle tenant relations if you decide to rent it out. My parents had sold the property and had no legal recourse. My mother tried next, pleading and explaining their situation, claiming they had been misled by North Star about the timeline for vacating the property. Again, the property manager expressed polite sympathy, but held firm on the terms. Over the next week, my parents made increasingly desperate attempts to contact both the management company and the mysterious Phoenix Holdings. I arrived early and waited, my heart pounding, as I heard the receptionist greet my parents and direct them to the room. The door opened. My father entered first, his posture rigid with defensive pride despite the desperate circumstances. My mother followed, her eyes downcast, clutching her purse like a shield. They both stopped short when they saw me sitting at the head of the conference table. Jay, my mother spoke first, confusion evident in her voice. What are you doing here? Are you working with these Phoenix people? I allowed myself a moment to savor the shift in power dynamics before responding. I am not working with Phoenix Holdings, I said calmly. I am Phoenix Holdings. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally, as understanding dawned, a slow burning anger. That is not possible, he finally sputtered. You do not have that kind of money. My parents had sold the property and had no legal recourse. My mother tried next, pleading and explaining their situation, claiming they had been misled by North Star about the timeline for vacating the property. Again, the property manager expressed polite sympathy, but held firm on the terms. Over the next week, my parents made increasingly desperate attempts to contact both the management company and the mysterious Phoenix Holdings. North Star undervalued the property significantly, just as they undervalued you. The difference is, I tried to warn you. I offered to help you get fair market value. You chose to shut me out and treat me like a failure and a burden rather than your son. So now you are evicting us. My father's voice had lost its bluster, replaced by something I had never heard before. Uncertainty. That depends entirely on you, I replied. I am willing to offer you a new lease agreement at a fair market rate, not the punitive amount in the letter, but there will be conditions. What conditions? My mother asked quietly. Family counseling, financial transparency, and a genuine apology for how you treated me. My father began to protest, but my mother placed a hand on his arm. Frank, stop. Just stop. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. We may have deserved this, Jay. We treated you terribly. It was the first genuine thing she had said to me in months. The transformation in our relationship did not happen overnight. The first family dinner after the revelation was painfully awkward, with my father barely speaking and my mother trying too hard to act as if nothing had happened. The first counseling session was even worse. My father spent most of the hour with his arms crossed, answering the therapist's questions with single words. My mother cried constantly. I sat between them, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake, thinking our relationship could ever be repaired. But slowly, week by week, things began to change. During our third session, the therapist asked each of us to share our deepest fear. My father, after initial resistance, admitted that he lived in constant terror of financial insecurity. My father lost everything in the recession of the 70s, he said quietly. We had to move in with relatives. The humiliation nearly destroyed him. I swore I would never let that happen to my family. His fear of financial ruin had driven his harsh judgment of my career setback. In his mind, my job loss was not just a temporary challenge, but the beginning of a devastating downward spiral he had spent his life dreading. My mother revealed her fear of social judgment. I always worried what others thought of us, of our family. When Jay moved back home, I was ashamed to tell my friends. Not because I was ashamed of him, but because I thought they would see it as a failure of our parenting. Understanding the roots of their behavior did not excuse it, but it helped me contextualize the pain they had caused. They were operating from their own unhealed wounds, projecting their fears onto me. As for me, I shared my lifelong fear of never being enough. I always felt I had to earn your love through achievement, I told them. That who I was as a person was less important than what I accomplished. My mother cried when I said this, real tears of regret, rather than the manipulative displays I had grown accustomed to. We never meant to make you feel that way, she whispered. But you did, I replied gently. Intentions matter, but impact matters more. Alongside the emotional work, I helped my parents create a legitimate financial plan for retirement. The fair rent they now paid me was actually less than what they had been paying for the condo, immediately improving their monthly cash flow. I set up a transparent system for tracking their expenses and building an emergency fund. My father initially resisted what he perceived as a role reversal with his son, now advising him on financial matters. But after I walked him through the numbers, showing how close they had come to financial catastrophe, his resistance gave way to grudging appreciation. You are good at this, he admitted one evening as we reviewed their portfolio. Better than I ever was. Coming from him, it was high praise indeed. My mother made efforts in her own way. She asked me over for Sunday dinners, cooking my favorite meals, just as she had when I first moved back. She stopped mentioning Cousin Thomas and his achievements. Most significantly, she hung my childhood photos back on the walls, alongside new ones of me in my professional life. 6 months after the confrontation in Alex's office, we celebrated my birthday together. As we sat in the dining room of what was now legally my house, my father raised his glass. To Jay, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. who taught his old man a few important lessons about family forgiveness and finance. "We are proud of you, son, not because of what you have accomplished, though that is impressive, but because of who you are." I nearly dropped my glass in shock. In 36 years, I had never heard him express pride in me as a person rather than as an achievement machine. Later that evening, as my parents prepared to leave, my mother hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on us," she whispered, "even when we gave up on you." I realized then that the house had never been the most valuable thing at stake. What I had really bought back was the possibility of a relationship based on truth rather than performance, on acceptance rather than conditional approval. Today, 1 year after purchasing the house, our relationship continues to evolve. There are still difficult moments and old patterns that emerge under stress, but we are learning a new way to be family, one honest conversation at a time. I still own the house, but I am considering selling it and helping my parents buy a smaller place that better suits their needs as they age. The house served its purpose as both an investment and a catalyst for change. Some symbols outlive their usefulness once their message has been received. The greatest lesson I learned through this experience was not about revenge or justice, though those elements certainly played their part. The true lesson was about breaking cycles of pain. My parents treated me the way they had been treated, passing down generational patterns of conditional love and fear-based parenting. By confronting those patterns directly, I created an opportunity for all of us to heal. Family relationships are complex tapestries of love, expectation, disappointment, and hope. Sometimes the threads become so tangled that the only way forward is to cut through them completely and begin weaving a new pattern. The family we create through choice and honest communication is often stronger than the one we inherit through circumstance. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who could not see your worth? How did you balance self-protection with the desire to maintain relationships? Share your experiences in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and the courage to rewrite your own story. Thank you for listening, and remember that your value is not determined by anyone else's ability to see it.